Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Finance Committee meeting of January 25th, 2024. We will call this meeting to order, and I do want to just remind everyone and ask people to mute their cell phones, and I promise at the end of the meeting I will remind you to turn them back on too, for which I'm famously known for not doing. We'll move to, so having called this meeting to order, we will now move to item 2, which is the land acknowledgement, and I will read it to us. Grimsby is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendourong, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara and the town of Grimsby stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Item 3 on our agenda, as always, is disclosure of interest, and so I'll ask if there are any disclosures from any of our members of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest. I see no hands raised, which is great. So we will say there are none. We will then move to item 4 on the agenda, which is the approval of the agenda itself. Could I have a mover and seconder to approve this agenda? That was Councillor Vardy, and Councillor Baradze seconded that. Sure. Oh, pardon me. Yes, Councillor Vardy, I think, has joined us via Zoom.
Yeah, I'm here, but I didn't put up my hand.
And I didn't see you put up your hand. That the brain was just not working there for a moment. So I will call for the motion resolved that the January 25th, 2024 Finance Committee agenda be approved. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And Councillor Vardy? Was that a hand up, Councillor Vardy?
Yeah, my hand is up. I just have to find the little icon there, but I can stick it up.
Thank you.
There.
Moving on to item 5 on our agenda is receipt of the previous minutes. So there are 2. Item 5.1 is the Grimsby Economic Development Committee minutes of November 9th, 2023. And item 5.2 is our Finance Committee minutes of December 14th, 2023. I'll just have a mover and seconder to put the resolution on the table. So will you move that, Councillor Charwa? Thank you. And a seconder for that, Member Thompson. Any questions, comments, adjustments that need to be made to the minutes as you read them? Then resolve that the following minutes be received. Pardon? Oh, pardon me. Okay. So you are lifting an item from which particular minutes?
Thank you, Chair. I'm trying to lift Grimsby Economic Development Advisory Committee minutes from November 9th.
And which item on the minutes specifically?
It's the verbal update, 6.1, and I think Frank might be on the line as well.
Mm-hmm. So if we can just, so that would be item 6.1, the Community Development Roundtable. Is that the particular one?
Yes.
Okay. So before we have the resolution to approve those 2 sets of minutes, we now have a mover by Councillor Charwa, so that item 6.1 from the Community Development Roundtable follow-up / next steps from the GDAC minutes of November 9th, 2023 be lifted for separate consideration. Would there be a seconder for that? Councillor Member Hutchings, and then all those in favor, please raise your hand. And that motion is passed. Shall we deal with this now, and then we'll move on to approve the minutes after that. So, Councillor Charwa, did you have a question about that particular item?
Yes, thank you. So I had messaged yesterday just for some clarification about the cost of the the Community Development Roundtable. I just wanted to know the cost, and then I wanted to know what the budget for 2023 for economic development was and what we actually did end up spending. So if you can just go over that, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair to the councillor. What we've got for a summary on the community roundtable event is a cost of $4,826.07. The bulk of that was for the charge at the Casablanca for the rental and the lunch piece, and then some minor pieces for ID badges and drinks and pop. And that's where we've got that for. In terms of the economic development budget, in 2023, the budget for revenue was $22,500 and the budget for expenses was $198,810. So the net is $176,310. We don't have the complete actuals yet for the year because we're just completing the year end. So our team is working on finalizing those numbers and we should have those fairly soon. We just want to get the last pieces in before we finalize and release those, and everybody will get those numbers, the final numbers for that. I'm not sure if Frank has anything to add to that, but that's just a high level on what the budget was at.
Do you have any other questions, Councillor Charwa?
That is great, thank you.
Do we know if Mr. Miele is with us this evening?
I am here.
Oh, hi, Frank. Welcome here. Do you have anything you want to add to that, or do you want to hold off and work with finance to get us that information later?
In terms of the costs of the event and the full budget, I think, the treasurer said it right on. And we were just actually we went through it this afternoon. It's about correct. It's about $4,800 that was spent and for the event, and the full budget for the economic development office is approximately under $200,000. The revenue that you see is from the downtown Main Street program that we have with the province.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Would you like to add to that?
Yeah, that is grant revenue, so just so you know.
Perhaps just to follow that train of thought then with the actual numbers, which I think is really what Councillor Charwa is ultimately looking for. When, maybe I could ask one of our finance staff, when do you think we may have drafts of the final numbers for everybody, but including this department?
Thank you, through the chair. There will be numbers provided with the budget information coming in the upcoming couple of weeks. And then there'll be final information in March when we've done a full final. But there will be kind of where we're at to date with the budget coming out.
Then I guess I will ask Councillor Charwa, will that be sufficient to answer your question when the budget comes out, to see the actual and the budget at that time?
Yes, that's great. It's something to look for later. Thank you.
I think that covers off that point then. So we will go back to the original resolution. Remind me, do we have a?
Yes, you got it.
We had a first and a seconder on that. So resolved that the following minutes be received. The Grimsby Economic Development Committee minutes of November 9th, 2023, and the Finance Committee minutes of December 14th, 2023. All those in favor of accepting the minutes, please raise your hand. And I will ask Councillor Vardy.
Oh, she has a hand up on Zoom. I can
Oh,
see
you,
it.
oh, very good. Okay. Thank you. So that is carried.
Sorry, Chair Dowley, just a quick note that I wanted to make. At the last meeting, we did have a motion on the transit information, and that the minutes did go to the last council meeting, and there was an amendment to the motion at council that was going. So I just wanted to clarify, because the motion, I've got it in front of me here, I have to take my glasses off, but what came through at the council meeting, the last one, was that council asked Niagara Regional Transit for ridership and billing information, and that the analysis be done on a random basis, or if notable, to do on a calendar year basis to determine value for money. So that's what went forward with the regional councillor here. And the clerks are also following up with regional council with that information that came from our council.
So then to clarify, I mean, we had a resolution at finance, which ultimately, I will say, morphed into a resolution at council as well. So when the reporting comes back, though, it's technically, I guess, council that's requesting that of it. But would it be possible to, at least even through a memo or whatever, bring that same information back to finance? Because I would imagine that our lay members, in addition to our councillors here, would really appreciate knowing that information too. They did support that resolution at the previous minute too.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And the motion we had was that we asked council to send a notification to the region requesting that. So it does align, but absolutely when that comes back, we can make sure that it gets on the agenda or distributed to the whole group so that everybody sees that.
Thank you. That would be great, I think, if the lay members also were able to receive it via this committee. So item number 6 is delegations and presentations, of which we have none. We will then move to item number 7, and we have the insurance program update, which is listed under consent reports. If anyone has any questions on it, we need to lift it out of there, and then we can talk about it. If there are no specific questions on this report, I see Member Scandinavo with his hand up. So just before we do that, then I will say that the proper method would be that you are asking to have this item lifted, and then we need a resolution in order to lift it, yes?
Not actually with consent, it just has to be considered first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then we can move right along to Member Scandinavo, and you have the floor, and you can ask any questions, or you have the floor.
I had a look at the report, and like you can see table 2, the costs are ballooning out of control. I mean, well, I shouldn't say out of control, but they're ballooning. I mean, as everybody else has noticed with their own insurance costs, whether personal or business. I'm just curious, has the town ever considered like a captive insurance program, or joining with other municipalities for a captive insurance program?
I will ask our treasurer to answer that, because there is a history there, yes.
Thank you, and through to the member. So the one thing I wanted to note, first of all, is that the program was looked at in 2023 to make sure that it was robust and covering what we needed to cover. We made no changes this year to deductibles or anything, and we were pretty consistent with last year. So this is, you're right, there's been a lot of insurance increases over the years. I have not seen a reduction before, and we actually had a slight reduction this year. So there was, from a budget perspective, it was a really good year for us. And I know Ange and our risk management procurement person were really keen on keeping up on these things. In terms of the pooled insurance, there was pooled insurance, and I wasn't in Grimsby, but many years ago, and there was some issues with the program, and you're kind of linked in with others' experience. So when you look at this piece, not that it's a right or a wrong, but there are programs out there that have evolved over time. But if one of the other municipalities has bad experience, it affects your insurance. So ours came down because we've had good ratings over the last year, and there was a lot, there was less claims. And so it's not just about you, it's about others. In Waterloo region, they do have a pooled program that they use, and it seems to work there, and they're happy with it, but it has not worked in other areas for different reasons. But absolutely something that we keep an eye on. There's a lot of change happening in there. And the other piece as well is that we don't have cyber right now, and we're still working with that. So with our IT department, so we went through a review. There were things that we needed to do. Those things have all been completed. I think we're on the very last step now. There's one last form that our IT department is completing, and we have put in money in the budget this year so that we can add it when it comes. So our broker will go out and get that and get us quotes, and we have a good idea of where that will land, and we have put that in the 2024 budget as a placeholder for when that happens. So I just wanted to let everybody know about that as well.
Does that answer any questions you have? Any other? Go ahead.
Thanks for that. Again, you know, I do want to rephrase my earlier statement. I don't mean ballooning out of control as in we're doing anything wrong. I just mean the cost of insurance is drastically increasing for everyone, and obviously here, including the town. I think what I meant by a captive insurance program is not necessarily pooling with other municipalities, but rather, you know, creating an insurance structure where you know, are able to tap into the reinsurance markets directly. And I mean, if you start adding in things like cyber, or you start, you know, the town, you know, acquires more assets, like these costs can like drastically increase again, because you have more to cover. So the idea of a captive insurance program is basically you create an insurance company to cover your own assets, and you know, sort of eliminate the middleman and get to the reinsurance market directly. Now, there is costs associated with that, and there has to be a bit of a cost-benefit analysis to determine, hey, is the extra work worth the savings, and so on and so forth. But obviously, like you said, there was a consultant that reviewed it, and you know, you feel like you're getting, you know, value for money, or with adequate coverages. But just something I kind of wanted to put on the docket to maybe see in the future. You know, as these things progress. Is there an opportunity to look with the risk manager at some sort of a captive program for Grimsby alone, so to speak?
Yeah, thank you. And through the chair, I mean, we're always open to looking at different opportunities. The other point I'd make, because I've been in this municipal insurance environment for a long time, there are fewer and fewer providers that are providing municipal insurance for various reasons, and especially cyber is one of those that, you know, in some of the larger organizations, you know, at the Region of Peel, they dropped our coverage because it was just too much risk for a lot of providers. And so there's other options that you look at in those cases, but there is a very, very tight market that does insurance for municipalities, but absolutely, I mean, we're open to looking at any options, and we do work. So I should say as well, the LAS, the local authority, we work with them as well. They provide a lot of background information in terms of, and they're linked to AMO as well, but in terms of information on insurance programs and insurance options and other pieces. So they have some good programs there, and we do stay in touch with them and keep involved in terms of their surveys that they're doing and what, you know, what everybody's doing, and if anybody's doing anything differently to try to capture that. But we have seen some success in the last year or so, and I haven't seen that in other municipalities this year. So I think we're lucky from that perspective. But again, it is claims-based as well. So if you have more claims, from an asset perspective, we do keep them pretty much informed, and we don't have too much of an issue with that. But as new things come online, we will see some different coverages as well that we'll have to look at.
Any other questions or comments from the committee members?
I have a question.
Councillor Vardy, go ahead.
Thank you. You know, we recently had this gas leak at the Peach King Center, and I was just wondering, what if the thing blew up? Where would that put us financially? So, is there how much would it pay for if something catastrophic like that happened? Do we have a deductible? Maybe you could just, you know, give me an idea about how that works.
Would one of our staff like to walk us through that scenario?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so we do have insurance that covers our buildings and accidents and all of that. And just looking up, is the deductible? We have different deductibles based on the different pieces, and our deductibles are fairly low. So I mean, that's positive and negative. But if she can find the deductible, I'll let you know. Okay, we'll keep going, and I'll come back with the deductible. I have it in my mind, but I don't want to say it in case it's wrong. So
I'm just looking for a ballpark, because
yeah,
you know, when they said that, you know, that there was a gas leak there, And I saw the fire trucks there, and I'm thinking about, well, you know, we're getting ready to renovate, and what if the thing blew up? I mean, let's say there was no injury to person, but if we just lost the building, I mean, how much would we be out of pocket for? And how much would insurance cover? And coming from the federal government, we were self-insured. So it's kind of new for me.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's 25,000, but Ann just checking it for me. And I'll confirm if I'm wrong, but I think it's somewhere around a $25,000 deductible. So our deductibles are pretty low, so we would pay the deductible, and then the rest of it would be covered from our insurance company. So now if you do have an accident like that volume, it is going to affect your future rates, because that would be a claim that would affect things for sure. But yeah, very few things in the municipal side are self-insured. Cyber is one of those things that is sometimes, but most other things you have coverage, and some deductibles are just higher than others depending. But as soon as Ange finds it, I'll let you know.
No, but listen, if like a ballpark figure is fine. I was
Yeah.
just wondering, like, would it be in the millions of dollars? Like, would it be?
No,
it would.
it's probably, I would say between 25 and 50 at the most, 1,000.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
because
right.
our deductibles
Thank you.
are pretty low.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I believe Councillor Baradzi had a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. I just wanted to ask, with the cybersecurity specifically, have we entertained risk pools with any of our surrounding municipalities as an initiative yet, or?
Okay. Through the chair to the councillor, no, and I think part of the reason on that right now is that providers have a ton of information that they require, and it's very specific to the organization. So if you start to pool, then you bring in all of those other municipalities and all of their systems. So what I'd say for now is that we're just trying to get to a spot where we can give them all of our information. Down the road, maybe we can look at something, but they need to have everything that we have, and so that they can go to market and say, here's the controls they have in place, here's the applications. Like there are piles and piles of paperwork that have had to be provided, and it's what they do for their underwriters, because really the underwriters need to see all of that. But pooling for that becomes difficult. I mean, if you're pooling resources and systems, but we're all on different systems. So, you know, we're not even on necessarily the same accounting systems or ERP systems or water billing. And so then you'd end up with a lot of different variables that you'd have to look at. But down the road, if you were sharing a service or whatever, then that would make some sense.
Member Hutchings?
Maybe just add to Councillor Bradley's comment. So maybe it's a different take on it, though, if I can, Stephanie. So maybe when I was at Brock, for instance, CISOs, I don't even know what that stands for, but yeah, there are people who do security. I don't know what the C and the I stand for. Anyway, but they're very expensive. In Brock, we couldn't afford our own CISO, so we partnered with University of Windsor, kind of the mid-range ones. You know, Western, UT, Queens could afford that themselves, but we couldn't. So we partnered with Windsor. So we had security officer, one central one for 4 universities, who was kind of testing our systems and things like that. That we share the cost on. Each one of us picked up a quarter. So not just from the insurance side, but there's some poolings from some security as well. So so that might be advisable in the future as well from the smaller municipalities, and Niagara may look at that or something, pooling together to look at security, because it is a huge thing. I know the city of Toronto was just facing their library, and it was a big issue for many, many months.
Any further comments from any councillors or members? Member Scandinavo, you had mentioned the deductible, and Ms. Nagel also mentioned the deductible in this particular case of the building of $25,000. What would be the impact of actually raising our deductible? Do we know that, or have we explored that in prior years?
Thank you for that. And Ange has confirmed that our general liability is $25,000. I thought that's what it was, but what I'd say is that if you decrease the deductible or if you decrease, your costs go up. if you increase the deductible, your costs will go down, not necessarily proportionately to the risk. What we did talk about this year was we had a fairly good year and we were pretty comfortable with our risks. If we want to increase risks and take on more of that ourselves, then we would want to bring something back to committee or council with changes. And that's something we always look at. But if there wasn't a budget pressure this year from it, and we were pretty happy with where we were sitting from a risk perspective without increasing risk. So, this year we renewed with those deductibles. But if we were seeing some significant claims or we were seeing some issues, once you start to get claims, your costs go up anyway. So then you're kind of sometimes forced to move your deductibles. But it's something that we look at every year when the insurance people come in. So we do have those discussions in terms of where we feel comfortable and what that looks like. So,
Do any committee members have any thoughts or comments on the deductible? Member Scandinavo?
Like, I agree. It's, it's a risk management decision as to increasing the deductible, increase your risk exposure to having to pay, some of the smaller claims or whatnot. I think really the devil's in the detail on that, like on some sort of a calculation. So I'm not saying, I don't necessarily want to request for this budget cycle, but at maybe some future budget cycle, we should see, what is the cost savings, especially in the face of the, insurance market increases, what is the cost savings and what is the risk exposure, looking at, again, can't read into the future, but I think we can definitely use the past as a guide as, how often do we get, pulled into a claim and, what's sort of the level of those claims and what would sort of be our exposure and compare that and contrast that to what the what the decrease in policy cost might be. But that's just my opinion.
yeah, no, we can take that back as advisement as we're looking at the program going forward. I think the thing we just have to keep in mind is that there's also things like the slips and falls and things like that, which are probably more prevalent than a building blowing up, right? So some of the deductibles are low because of those types of claims versus kind of the kind of risk of the higher claim, but they can be measured and there is that opportunity. What I'd say is that you just have to, council has to be aware and committees have to be aware in terms of that when you take that extra risk, because then when something happens and you have to pay, it's a different amount. So, but it is a balance. It's just a balance of risk and payout, right? So, absolutely something that we can take back, and we can probably bring back next year on the renewal in terms of what will be the cost to change the deductibles and what that looks like. It's similar to your car insurance every year, right? There's the pros and cons to everything and where you feel comfortable. But we were pretty comfortable this year with what the program looked like, so that we felt like it was good for where we were sitting right now.
Then would it be, I'll just finish my thoughts and then I'll give the floor over to you, Bill. So the policy runs from January 1 to December 31st. Then would it be reasonable to request staff to consider this in the fall, let's say, and come back with a report to this committee in October, November, sometime before the actual renewal of it? Because I assume that's when you're looking at it anyway, before it's going to renew. Sorry.
Yeah, through the chair. We do start the process in September, so usually we have a good idea by November, and then we don't get the signing done till later. So I think probably November would make the most sense, because we'll have gone through the program details and the insurer will have gone out and gotten us some information, and we can go with that back to the committee.
Then we may need a resolution to that effect, or is that just something that can be noted in the minutes and added to the work schedule?
I think it can just be noted in the minutes. It's normal course of our work, so it would just be bringing a report back in advance of the signing of the insurance. Yeah, Angela added to the list.
Thank you, Angela. I will give the floor over, though, to Member Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, just very basic. I'm assuming the town then has a line item for having a reserve fund for insurance to pay the deductible.
I'm going to let staff answer that one.
Yeah, I was just confirming. In terms of the insurance, we don't have a specific reserve for insurance. We would use the contingency reserve.
And roughly, what does the contingency reserve sit at right now? We'll be generous, I'd say, to the nearest, 100,000.
And so how we hold the policy is at 10 to 15% of expenditures, so approximately 3 million.
Reserve at the moment.
Yeah.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, comments, then remind me again, we do have a first and seconder for this? No, okay. So the resolution is resolved that report Finance 24-02, the 2024 Insurance Program Update dated January 25th, 2024, be received for information. But first I need someone to make the resolution and I need a seconder. Councillor Bradzi had his hand up to make that resolution. Member Scandinavo has seconded that. So then I will ask for a vote on it. I won't read it again. It's pretty straightforward. So all those in favor, if you could raise your hand indicating that you're in support of this. And Councillor Vardy, we see you. Thank you. So that motion is carried. The next item on our agenda is now item 8.1 under discussion reports, and that's Finance Report 24-03, the biannual procurement report. Could I have a mover and a seconder to get this on the floor before we have any questions? So that would be Councillor Bradzi, and Councillor Charwa seconded that. So staff, would you like to take us through that report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this report is biannual, so this is July 1st to December 31st report on procurement. You would have seen the beginning of the year report partway through this year. So this actually follows through our procurement processes, and it indicates in each area, so the type of procurement, so it starts with the informal procurements, and then a detailed list of what that means and all of the procurements, what the costs were, and the description. So the first set is the information, or the informal. The second set is invitational. Then there's the open competition, and it has the numbers at the top too, so you can see how many were done in each of those areas. And then we move on to the non-competitive. So there were 2 non-competitives, and then 1 emergency procurement piece that's listed in here, which was related to fire. And then a cooperative procurement, and then the 3 contract amendments. There were no surplus asset disposals during that time. And then there is an appendix that does speak to kind of the non-competitive. There was only 2 of those, and one of them, if I go back to that non-competitive here, one of them, I believe, was the, one was a fire, and one was work on growth management that was captured from Watson. So I'm not sure if there's specific questions on any of these, but I think it is fairly well spelled out, and it does have details for each procurement.
Councillor Charwa?
Through your chair, thank you. I'm just wondering if you can kind of walk us through the informal quote process first.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, through the councillor. Oh, and just Ohanda is on, Aikika is on the line tonight as well. So he's our contract procurement person while Adrian's been on maternity leave for the last few months. So just in case we get too detailed, I might need him. But in terms of that, so the informal procurement, there were 11 informal procurements, and that does set in our bylaw. And I have the bylaw with me if you need anything, but it's section 19 of the bylaw. And basically, this is where we seek 3 quotes. And so we have at least 3 written quotes and an award to the lowest bidder. And these are for kind of smaller procurements. So in this case, there was, I'm just looking at the details here, but some playground protective equipment, some different cleaning, tree maintenance, tree removal, and all of those are listed there, but that's really a process where you're going out, at a certain value and looking for at least 3 written quotations, and the lowest bid is accepted. So they don't need to go to a formal large procurement because it's not a large dollar value, and they don't need a lot of details. It's a simpler service generally.
Do we have another question?
Yes. I'm just wondering if we have any policies in place for supporting local businesses when we're when we're getting these quotes. I went to see a business today, and it just so happened we were having this discussion about supporting local and something else that came up. And I didn't think we had anything for that. And I think if our goal is, economic development, and we're really actually trying to build the businesses here, we should be supporting them. So I'm just wondering if we have any policies in place to seek those businesses for some quotes.
Through the chair. So our current procurement bylaw is policy in essence. So it's the policy that's in effect right now, and there is nothing in there that speaks to a need to go local. What I'd say is that there's a lot of information in there in terms of going with lowest bid. When you do an RFP, it's also about scoring their service levels and that sort of thing. You can put pieces into policies. You just have to be careful that it does allow for the right levels of competition, because there are rules that we have to follow under the public sector. But we can go back and look at, I should say we are going back and looking at the procurement policy bylaw over the next few months. We do have some overlap as our procurement person is coming back from maternity leave, and we have our contract person still on for a couple of months. So they're going to work together as well to look at some of those refinements. So what I'd say is if there's specific things, what I have said in meeting with staff in the last couple of weeks is that it will be important for them not only to go out and get feedback from directors and people doing the procurements and all of that, but also from finance and the committees in terms of pain points or suggestions. So I think that would be a good suggestion to put in to see what we can do and maybe what others are doing, and try to have that something that works in alignment with kind of the provincial guidelines and the act.
Member Hutchings?
Just to add to that, if I can, I can see to Director Nagel's comments, I would agree. There's legal. There's huge case law on this about procuring. You can't just go local. So I can see but I'm going to switch a little gear to Councillor Sharwar's comments. Is that I could see the open competition procurements, the invitational procurement following those case law, but the other ones you're doing more informally with 3 quotes is a little looser, and you could probably try to look at more local stuff there. So I think that's what probably we come back. That's where you should be looking at it. So, yeah. Okay.
Councillor Baradji?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I agree with Member Hutchings' comments. Definitely, I don't know if we can spec that when we're receiving multiple quotes that one local supplier be when available, be requested for a quote. But my main questions were kind of around the non-competitive procurements. I see that the two, the one is the fire pump repair. So I'm assuming that it's non-competitive just for the need of expediency with the repair of the truck. Would that be correct?
The page you're on, perhaps that would help? The page of the report you're referring to, or the section?
6.
Page 6? Just to help everybody so that we're all looking at the same page?
Thank you, through the chair. So I don't believe I was the treasurer that signed off on that one, but I do believe it is for expediency in that case. And it was an emergency repair, so they would go to the quickest vendor that they could get to be able to do that. And it's important that the pump be repaired quickly.
Do you have another question? Go ahead.
So the other one, it's just it's a fiscal impact study by the Watson Associates and Engineers. I understand that's below the procurement value of $100,000. I just curious to what put it into the non-competitive category.
Thank you, and through the chair, my understanding is this was with Public Works and Planning, and it related to the growth, MZO, thank you. So Watson would be, yeah. Yeah, and Watson would also be one of a couple that can do the work, and they would have already done work around that in other areas for our DC background study and those pieces that align. So they would have direct knowledge that would allow them to be able to work on that quickly.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Are there any other questions about this report? Member Hutchings.
You're going to have to grant me some leeway here, Madam Chair. So I'm going to have a big front end to a small back end question. What I struggle with a little bit, this committee is having a director's designation. You teach in director's school. That's, you spend, and you're probably not going to like this, Chair. You should spend about 5% of your time in hindsight audit, like as a board. Probably about 15 to 20% of your time in oversight, like what people are doing. But you should spend, and you put people like myself and the other members on this committee for insight, right? And yourself as counselors have insights what's going on. So that should be about 20% of our time. But a lot of time we should be talking about foresight, which is your 30 to 40% of the time. And most councils, sitting with many, don't normally do that. They like oversight and hindsight, and they don't really plan for the future. And you really need to push and create visions and stuff for the future, and that's where you should be pushing for. So I told you it was going to be a big front end to a very short back end question. I really struggle with CS or whatever on page 4 of 9, the Aquacon construction, because it's only one little piece. The 252, and this is not, Stephanie, this is nothing you can fix, nothing at all. But what I struggle with it is being on the finance committee and not seeing the whole, and I don't know if this goes to Public Works or where this goes, but I see the whole Peach King Center project. I've never seen a total, how we're financing it. I just get the hindsight of it's the 5% that I'm supposed to be looking at, but I don't get the foresight, the strategy, what it's going to look like, what's the cost, how it's being monitored, are we keeping on track? Because I just feel that somewhere down the road, this project goes awry, somebody's going to say, well, you sat in the finance committee, what did you do? But I go, well, I've just told stuff after it happened. So I've never been given the strategy that I feel as a director on any board, whether it be the Town of Grimsby Finance Committee or any governance body I sit on. It's nice to understand the foresight. So I don't know if that was a question, but maybe somewhere in there is. But does this? I guess the question is: does this get reported somewhere, like to Public Works? Is there monitoring, or is there another committee that follows capital projects like this? And I guess that's my question.
Okay, I will try to answer that through the chair. So this is a report just on the procurements for the last half of the year. So this would have gone through Community Services and Council, I believe, or at least Council. I'm not sure if it went to Community Services. No, didn't it? Okay, so it went to Council. I know that updates do come sometimes to Community Services, but I think for the Peach Kings, most of that has come directly to Council. And I do believe, no, am I wrong?
It's within the budget, council has approved the amended budget, but the procurements, if they're within.
Oh, the procurements themselves.
Then there would be no council on that, as long as there's no changes from the original.
Yeah, I think so. The actual budget approval went through, and the Peach King. So the amendment. So I should back up. There was an approved project, and then there was an amended design and amended project before I started, but I am catching up. And that got us to the 36 million envelope of the project, and that was approved by council, and the construction management firm was hired within that new approved budget piece. There's also a project manager that was a project management firm that was hired as well, but I think that was probably in the first procurements. So this was new to the procurement at the time. I understand from Sarah Sweeney that there is an update coming to council, I think February 5th. Yeah, we were just talking about that the other day. So February 5th, there'll be an update to council. So perhaps maybe the information from that can come back to the committee to provide that report as information back to the committee or something to give them an update. I'm not sure. I don't know if there'll be a presentation or not. I just know there's a report coming. But yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I think putting it all together, but I think most of it has happened at the council level because of the size of the project, and through the budget process as well.
Member Hutchings, do you have another question?
I was just going to say, I see, and thank you very much for that response. Thank you.
Councillor Barazzi was first, and then Member Scandinavo will be after that.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate Member Hutchings bringing this up. I was actually kind of planning to under new business. So we've seen tonight, actually, Councillor Vardy brought up the ammonia leak at the arena, as well as in the GDAC minutes. Simon Dong had talked about how the Peach Kings are relocating to Beamsville during the project. Just a little background for the project. I've been a dissenting view of the project since the beginning. I personally have got fears over the cost of the project has ballooned. I mean, the original was 16 million with our commitment of 5 before our whole term of council. And then we as a council approved more in the summer when we had our eyes on additional revenue that we did not realize. I'll leave that at that. I just want to hear from this committee. I've got some concerns. I want to hear what you guys think. I want your advice, especially Member Hutchings. You've been involved with I see a lot of similarities with the Hamilton Bulldogs, now Brantford Bulldogs scenario here. Our Grimsby team, we care about our Peach Kings. They're as old as our town. It's 100 years. I fear that should they go to Beamsville and their market conditions improve, they do not come back. Keeps me up at night.
I think there's probably two concepts there, right? The monitoring of the project from a fiscal perspective, and then the loss of a key user of that facility. Member Scandinavo, would you like to make any comments or have the floor?
Thanks, Chair. The irony, Member Hutchings bringing this up, I prior to the meeting starting, I mentioned to our chair here that, we talk a lot about the Peach King Center, like in general and at high level, and we see snippets. But I don't think this committee has seen like the overall picture and the direction and the funding sources and sort of any sort of borrowing requirements or what the financial picture of this endeavor looks like. Again, we're here to provide insight and here to provide recommendations. We're not voting members, but ultimately this seems like a major project of the town. And again, we're constantly hearing snippets of it, but we don't see the full picture. So presumably some of these reports have been put together over the years. It's gone to council. It's not as if this hasn't been done. I was wondering if perhaps we could be given the opportunity to review some of the former reports, or at least a high-level synopsis of where it started, where it is today, and how it's going to be funded. And I also just want to add, I do agree with your comments, Member Hutchings. It's great to look at things in hindsight, but I do believe where we're going to get value here is looking at things going forward. So, that's it in a nutshell. I think there's a question in there, but.
So, absolutely. So, I mean, having only been here a few months, I've been catching myself up on the Peach Kings as well. I'm an avid Peach Kings fan. I'm often at many games. And, we do use that arena as well. And so very interested in the project, from a personal perspective as well. What I'd say is, yes, I think this has started a couple of years ago and has morphed into something, there's been changes, there's been design changes. I think from your perspective, it might be, I don't know if it's worthwhile to go back through previous reports, or if it makes sense to have Sarah Sweeney out to one of these, or one of her staff out to one of these meetings to just provide an update. And I know you're the chair of the committee on community services. So I think that might be helpful. We can bring back, what has been approved by council in terms of the financing plan. So there is debt associated with it as we move forward. There is money coming from the province as well, 16 million from the province. So, and we have been putting money aside as well and preparing for the debt. So what we've been doing proactively is adding an amount each year to the budget, putting that money aside in a reserve, but then also building it so that when we get to having to make debt payments, that we won't have to increase the budget at that point in time, that we'll be ready for those payments. So there is a component in this year's budget that is getting us there as well. And we're also looking at interest rates and borrowing timing and talking to the region about that as well. Because we also have the hospital commitment that's actually coming first. So that will be our first debt issuance, and then there'll be pieces on this. But what I'd say is that at this point in time, it's gone through a lot of iterations, but there's also been significant amount of money spent as we move forward. There has been procurement for a project manager and for the construction management. So they will be doing their own procurements. They are a C1 contract, which is that they do their own procurement pieces. We will see it, but we're not doing the procurements internally. And there will be 4 procurements done over the course of the next year or so on different components. So there was some work done, I believe, by Sarah Sweeney and her team to look at the advantages of going with that type of format. But we are committed to those contracts. So any changes to the project or what is happening, there is already money that's committed for those pieces, right? So I think it's at that point where it's moving, and yes, the Peach Kings do have to move to Beamsville at some point for a period of time. Hopefully it's not a long period of time and everything is good. But yeah, we do have the information we can provide on the debt side and the financing piece, and maybe, I'll let Councillor Sharwa maybe chime in as well as, on the community services side in terms of if they can have Sarah or someone come out to kind of just do a quick update and maybe provide some of the visuals as well in terms, I know there's some at the arena that show kind of what it's supposed to look like, but I've been over and asked questions as well to figure, what does this mean and where is it going to go, and to look at what that looks like for future years. And they will also be doing a user fee study on the community services side in 2024 that's in the budget, so that they can start to build in how the fees and how that will work with programming out of the new location.
Thank you. I guess what we're hearing from everyone is that we know this is the largest capital project that this town has undertaken in a very long time. And I think what happened is that some of these initial reports came to council before we even had standing committees created. And then we created the standing committees, and it would probably be a really good suggestion, and it is a good suggestion, not probably, it is a good suggestion that, our members, especially of our finance committee, need to have that same information that many of us as councillors received as we went along in terms of what is the concept, what is the budget, and so on, right? So that everybody is up to date on what is going on the first part. So that's the first part. What is the project? What is it envisioned to cost us, and so on, right? What were the amendments to the project and all of that? All that good stuff, including numbers, right? Because that's what this committee is about. The second part of it, though, is the monitoring of the project as well, right? To make sure that it doesn't go over, that it doesn't fall off the rails. And I guess to summarize, what I'm hearing from the committee members, and I will echo that, is that we're concerned that there is a process in place to monitor that. And I think what I'm hearing from the Finance Committee is that they would appreciate being part of that process, or at least receiving reports on I'll say regular basis, and I'll let you determine what that is, but to really know, where do we stand on all of that, right? This isn't just like, replacing a short strip of a broken water main. This is a $36 million project that can that has the remote possibility of not turning out as we expect, right? And so there is concern, I'm sure, right around this table to make sure that it stays on the rails. And so the question is, how do we help as a finance committee make sure that, those involved in it stay on the rails? I will stop there. Councillor Bradzi had his hand up first, and then I will recognize Councillor Sharwa.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. My main concern is the
I also have my hand up for some time.
Thank you.
Do you want to go first, Leanne? Councillor Vardy, sorry. I'll yield to you.
Councillor Vardy, we haven't heard from you. Councillor Bradzi has said he'll stand down with his comments until we hear from you.
Thank you very much. I just want to say that, with all due respect to Councillor Bradzi, Council has made a decision to move forward with this project. I don't think it's the responsibility of this committee to look at whether the value of the project in terms of it being a project. For me, I see the committee's role in looking at this strictly from the financial perspective and how it fits into the broader financial perspective of the town. And I just think there's a distinction. Like, I don't think it's for this committee to go, well, we should have another rink, or, we should have a second story, or there should be a walkway, or that is not the role of this committee, to my mind. The role of this committee is to look at what's the budget, how are we proceeding, how is it being funded, how are we managing the finances of this in the context of all the other things, such as the hospital and other things that we have to accomplish. So I just wanted to make that point so that we're clear on what is the role of the finance committee versus what is the role of council with regards to this project. So I don't know if people agree or disagree, but those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Vardy. Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. So I kind of agree with you on this committee, but for my contributions to this committee, I'm definitely not an accountant. So I'm kind of looking at this from my experiences. And my concern is we're adding a new basketball gym onto two old arenas. And if you know anything about arenas, they're extremely inefficient when it comes to energy. As we saw, we had an ammonia leak this week. I just feel we're short-sighted on the building that is existing, and we're going to still have these operating costs from an old building with a new building attached to it. We approved more money for green initiatives. The building as a whole will be, it's an old cinder block building. It's not going to be really welcome to receiving these changes. It's definitely further along in the process, probably, to be making considerable changes. I still think we should be looking at the whole picture and the building as a whole and doing something greater for what it is.
Councillor Sharwa.
Through your chair, thank you. Respectfully, I disagree. We've already had this talk. It's already been approved. And I wish we had this committee formed earlier, because maybe we could have found a way to get this number down. And a lot of this was already approved from the last council, and we did the best that we can. And I think I want to make sure that this committee, everybody has the information, and that we can do the most with that information moving forward. So maybe with the committee, we can have Sarah here to go over the numbers, and maybe it's, in the committee's best interest, where we can look at how can we maintain this building, how can we make sure that we're, leveraging it as much as possible, so that it's not a big burden on the taxpayer. How can we do that moving forward? But I think the actual building and construction's already done. We've already, have obligations, and we can't make any changes. And the more time that we waste and the more time that we're stalling on this project, the more it's going to cost us. So we need to just move forward and just try to do our best with this project as it is.
Member Hutchings.
If I can, yeah. So I'm trying to frame this through the Finance Committee and through governance, and I sometimes have difficulty because I want to come from a management point of view. I'm going to take it from a governance point of view. So I asked the question, I started the conversation by asking a question really about foresight, and then we're only getting snippets of this and stuff like this. And I guess to me, it's a risk issue for me, right, as a Finance Committee member, right? So we're seeing things a little, we see the Colliers, money, we see the, Aquacon money now and what have you. So we're not seeing the total. So I guess my question would be, is there's two ways to run a project. I've done a number of projects in my career, and there's two ways to run a project like this. And it's, and I'm speaking from a risk perspective. One, you have a really good internal committee that's getting regular monthly reports on things, and they question stuff. Because contractors and architects and stuff are looking at price elasticity of demand. You know what that means? That they are looking to see, we come back to council, you want another 2 or 3 more million, and council gives it to, hey, they gave us that, and we're going to, we may have more, they may have more. Like, where's the bottom? Where are they going to go to? So you have to have very strict project management and construction management principles. A lot of councils, mine included, where I work, have subcommittees. We're building a police station for $57 million. We have a police services task force. There's a subcommittee that monitors. Every month I go to the police service task force, we monitor that on this very specific project. And so there are things that, so staff have to come and explain the variances, and many times things slip from a Class D estimate to a class, when it comes in at Class B, they slip, and what do you do? What's going to be accepted and things like that. Contractors act a little bit differently when they know they have strong project management oversight on it. So I asked that from a risk perspective. Now, I don't want to change the Peach King Center or do anything, the horse is out of the barn. I just want to make sure from a risk management point of view moving forward, we get a full picture, and that picture is being managed with a framework. That's really what I'm trying to say. And what's the full picture? How does it affect, back to member Scandinava was saying, does it affect us, but how are we managing it through a proper, is there an internal system or is there not? And if there's not, is council being asked to do that, or if council is not and we don't have either, that's a risk management issue. Okay?
Yeah, through the chair.
Yes.
So a couple of different pieces, I would say. Sorry. I'll try to address that. I just have a thing in my throat. Oh, I talk so much. Yeah, so what I'd say is there are updates that will come from community services. They are running the project, but they have hired a project management firm. So they will be doing the extensive project management. Sorry. And there is going to be reporting back. I think the idea was the reporting back was going to be to council. If there's a preference to change the governance, I think they could look at options to do that. My understanding is that after each procurement, that we'll know where we stand on that procurement, how it fits with what we thought it was going to be, and if there's any slippage, that we would then discuss that and determine at the time if it's relevant and can be accepted within the whole scope of the project, because there is contingency in that as well, and where that goes. So I think those pieces will happen. Finance has been working really closely with community services on processes to get the bills paid in a timely manner, because we're under the Construction Act and have to make sure that those payments, so we don't want to be holding payments up and having any issues there. So, and there is project management on Sarah Sweeney's side as well. Trevor is project managing and working with the other side. But the bulk of it, that piece around procurement and managing the construction pieces has been contracted out. But there is no subcommittee at this point in time. Right now, my understanding is that they're going to council, and that would be where they would update on the project because of its size. But I don't know that there's not a reason why there couldn't be updates to both community services and to finance as needed, maybe dual reporting, depending on the timing, and maybe that's something that we need to work with Sarah Sweeney in terms of having when are those key milestones coming back. And I think some of that work may be done, but Councillor Sharwa?
Did that answer your question, Member Hutchings?
Sort of, kind of, it sounds like there's no council oversight, and it sounds like there's no internal staff oversight. So that's, I mean, there is you have a project manager and stuff like that, but there's no internal staff committee, I guess, that I'm hearing that's normally that you have with finance and the CEO and the director and those sorts of things, making sure they're monitors. But yeah, so it answered my question, but it didn't answer my question. So thank you.
Member Scandinavo had his hand up here beside me, and then Councillor Sharwa.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm sounding repetitive or not, but I guess at the end of the day, you get a report, very detailed and thorough report here. You see a line item for $2.5 million. It seems to be part of the Peach Kings project. It's like the reserve discussion I had a number of months ago, where it's like you're asking us, to accept this report as information. But it's like, what does this play into the whole bigger picture? I guess to Member Hutchings' comment, like, again, we're not here to discuss like and Councillor Charwal, we're not here to discuss like the number of, rinks or the number of basketball nets or the number of hallways, right? We're here to discuss to say, okay, a project has been approved by council. And I think, in my opinion, are we being asked to say, okay, if this project's been approved and it's been assigned a budget and we're being fed information about it, and we're being asked to accept things or vote on things or recommend things to council, it's very difficult from my perspective to be able to say with 100% assurance to say, yeah, that makes sense, when you don't know what the full picture is or we aren't receiving some sort of report. So it sounds like that's like we've all said the same thing and something's going to come out of that. But ultimately, that's where I struggle. It's like, you look at a report and you're seeing, a snippet of a snippet, and it says, okay, great. But, if somebody's asking me for $1 million and I have $2 million in the bank, but I really have $48 million in debt, it's hard to only make a decision having one piece of that information. So I'll leave it at that. But I think we need to get, if we're going to be looking at this from a financial perspective, being one of the largest capital endeavors being taken on by Grimsby in the last little while, it's important that we either get all the information or not. So,
Councillor Vardy, we weren't sure if your hand was still up from last time or if it had gone down and was back up again. So I'll just ask if you have any questions or would like the floor.
Thank you. Yes, I did put it up. Perhaps we should ask our CAO to address this issue. It's like I'm sitting here thinking there may be gaps in our information. Things might be happening that we're not aware of. So I think it might be good if the next meeting our CAO could weigh in on some of these, some of the comments and suggestions. And at the same time, present a more fulsome picture of where the project is from the financial standpoint. Would that be a good recommendation to make?
I think that certainly is some serious food for thought. Councillor Charwa, I will let you speak first, and then I will add my comments.
Thank you, Chair. So as you know, I'm a huge proponent of sharing of information, especially with committee members. This is one of my biggest things. So I want you all to have the information. And I would actually prefer that this committee gets that information before it goes to council, because I respect the opinions of this committee. And I think that the recommendations, again, for how we maintain this building and everything moving forward, absolutely, I think we could do a lot with that. Again, let's just keep it in mind, like this is already happening. So let's just move forward. But if a subcommittee wanted to be formed, that would be great with me as well. Not to be on it, but if other people did, that would be another suggestion. I don't know if anybody else wants to take that on.
I'm going to add some comments, but go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. I was just going to say, I mean, I think I think to that point, I think it is a discussion that has to be had at council and with the CAO as well, in terms of how they want to govern that piece. So, and I just wanted to clarify, it's not that we don't have a staff group looking at it, because we are working together with Public Works, and we've had discussions with several municipalities that are using Aquacon and Colliers and looking at similar projects and how they're managing those and making sure that we're following similar processes. So, finance staff are going to be monitoring the dollars being spent. We will have that information. So we will be keeping that, in our minds as well. And we're trying to figure out processes so that we can do the payments quickly in the timelines, because there's the 28, 30 days that you have to pay. And so you want to make sure you're following legislation as well. But again, I think if there is a subcommittee, maybe this is the subcommittee, but I think that has to be that governance model. If there is a subcommittee, whether it's the finance committee or some sort of subset, I think that's a good discussion to have with finance, or with council, and maybe it's something that comes out of this committee as a recommendation or a discussion with the CAO to bring something a little bit differently. And if it's not this committee, then what is the reporting structure? So I understand exactly where members are sitting on this. There's pieces that go to council, there's pieces that go other places. You're not approving the procurements. Those procurements have already happened. It's just information, and we're required under the bylaw, but it is confusing when you didn't see the other pieces, right? So absolutely, and putting all that together probably makes some sense. And I also think there should be a reporting structure that comes out from the area that says when they're going to report to council, when they're going to report to committee, and what that looks like. So I think that would be a good next step as well, to look at, where they're sitting. I think the procurements and this whole piece has just been evolving, and they're getting close to kind of starting construction and the first procurement. So that would be a good time. And that is why I understand Sarah is coming on February 5th. So for lay members, that might be a good meeting to watch online, to get just for that piece, if you're interested. And then that might be something that you can ask at the council meeting as well, to say, like, what's the next updates, or is there a plan for updates to council or committees? Because I think they'll have that ready as well to talk about.
Member Hutchings?
I won't drag this on. Maybe it's as simple as for us to get, quarterly or monthly at these meetings, a simple chart that's got your stages on the left. This is the consulting, this is the management construction, this is phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1 on the column would say, I can draw it out, you know what I'm talking about, you've done this. Budget, spent to date, forecast, final budget, we see the variances as it goes through. Maybe it's as simple as one little financial chart that gives us that on a monthly basis to see how things are going. So again, from a financial perspective, not to micromanage the project, not to change the project, it's going, just so we can see if there's, if we're way out or something's way over, something's under, and see how it's going, because that changes debt, that changes all kinds of financial projections for us.
We can ask for that as a standing item. I think there hasn't been a lot of specific activity because the construction hasn't started. There's been costs, but not a specific activity started yet with the construction. But as that ramps up, that would be information that would be available. And Anne's just shaking her head. She can do that. So, and it would be high level, and it would just be at a point in time. I think that's, as long as you're okay with that, and then the rest of the pieces we can work on as it goes.
I was going to add, now that everyone has had their chance to, that, so the project started off as, coming to council, then standing committees were formed, and we're now getting closer and deeper into this project. But I too echo the concern that we don't have any regular reporting, and we need to set those policies and procedures up before we get any deeper into the construction of this. I think my concern, and I'm always happy when all my fellow councillors want to have more financial information, that's great. But But my concern is that if that information went straight to council, and we have 9 people sitting around a table, we're not going to really dive into the details. In a council meeting, there are so many other things that come that I personally like the idea of, I will call it a subcommittee or an ad hoc committee to kind of govern this on behalf of, and then to either report to council that way or something like that. But I do feel that, getting into the nitty-gritty details of it with all 9 of us at a council meeting is council's there to deal with the high-level things. The actual, management and monitoring of it, I think, needs to happen at a different level. And so I do like the idea of having either an ad hoc committee to oversee it and to get the reports, or failing that, to come to finance at least, so that we can provide monitoring and oversight that way and report to council in a summary fashion then. So we've kicked this idea around, had lots of ideas. At this point in time, I think we would be wise to have a resolution on the table. So does anyone have any thoughts? Would you like staff to prepare a report on this to us? Would you like to recommend the formation of an ad hoc committee to monitor this? There are various options on how to tackle this at this point. And I see Councillor Charrois' hand up.
Through you, Chair, thank you. I would say some kind of a report, because I'm not sure that everybody has the time for the subcommittee, unless maybe we could find out if anybody has an interest in it, time-wise. I do not. So possibly just a report.
Well, the subcommittee doesn't need to be it could be a subcommittee of finance. It doesn't need to have only finance committee members on it. It can certainly draw from other councillors or from other staff to sit on it too. Do you want to just expand upon your thinking there?
I just think it should be the committee members or nobody else, because this committee is full of people that this is our strength, right? And so I don't want to just pull anybody and be forming new committees just out of the blue, because again, people don't have all the information. Here, I'd rather give all the information within the committee members and have our own little subcommittee, rather than just extract little pieces of information and hope people will do the best with it, if that makes sense.
I'm going to ask Member Scandinavo, but before that, Member Hutchings, you had talked about what is happening at another municipality and the formation of what I'll call an ad hoc committee. Can you just expand upon that for us and explain to us sort of how it was formed, who sits on it, and how it's working?
So it's not uncommon at municipalities for big capital projects to set up a specific oversight committee, ad hoc committee that council will endorse through so, for instance, where my employer is obviously you have a police services board. The Brantford Police has their own police services board. We have their chair and another member sit on that, and we have 3 councillors and staff. We report that on a monthly basis on how the project's going, the costs. First of all, it's design. First of all, and then after that, now we're into project implementation, much similar stage that Beach King Center's in, and so now we're reporting on the costs, how our Class D estimates are. We have cost estimators in, telling us what the cost will be, because it's changing. Capital's going up and down right now, mainly up. And then when now it's RFP, that'll come in and it'll be reported back to the committee that we're within budget and we're ready to go. If it's not, then we've got to figure out how, if the committee wants to take that up to council or not. So just an oversight. So we meet with them monthly. We have a meeting Monday at 5:30 if everybody wants to watch on YouTube. But it's just an oversight committee that we report to. So it just gives some rigor to the project managers to come and present and know that's going to be seen every month and how the project stays on track, on time, and on budget.
So let's just talk about something that would be the equivalent and how we could structure it here. What I'm hearing from you is that there's 3 councillors on there, and 2, now in this case, because it's the Police Services Board, 2 members of the Police Services Board. I guess in order to be comparable, it would be something like 2 members of the Community Services Committee would be the equivalent of that, and then 3 other councillors. And I guess at that point in time, we have to be really careful, because then we have 5, which would constitute a quorum of council. So we have to rethink this. Maybe at this point, rather than trying to design the exact recommendation, maybe it would be prudent to at least have a resolution and ask staff to prepare a report on how what their ideas and recommendations would be on how to provide oversight by council and the councillors of what is happening in this. Member Charwa.
Through your chair, thank you. I just think to simplify it, it'd be nice if we could just have the little report, and then this committee, like on a regular basis, has our suggestions, and we can make this committee like the subcommittee rather than pulling new people, right? So, no. But then, the nice thing is as well that like this is also online, so people have all the information too.
I think that if we do that, we're going to need probably Director Sweeney to be coming to every meeting to provide that update to us. Member Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. And just through you, I've listened to a lot. I appreciate everything. The money's been spent. It's going to be spent. We've approved this. Council's approved this. Some of us may not have liked it, but it's been approved. At the end of the day, I still haven't heard from the director herself. Maybe there's a lot of things going on here we've been talking about, she knows of. And I think it's a time that we let Sarah maybe speak, or the CAO, like they say. I appreciate what Member Hutchings has said very much. I do understand that. The last project I worked on was the building of Station 2. We had a great ad hoc committee with the chief, myself, and a firefighter who actually was a project manager. So the 3 of us overseeing it and kept it on target. So there is a benefit to that, definitely. And since we haven't heard from the director herself, who is going to be responsible for this, and when I see money like this going out, a project manager reaching 10% of the cost already, somebody's responsible already. So I'd like to hear from the director herself and see maybe what they have.
Then I would say probably the best way to do that, though, is still to ask for a report from our staff, including from the Director of Community Services, as to how they foresee oversight of this project taking place. Councillor Vardy, would you like to chime in?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. I think that what we should do is recommend that staff prepare a report for council to determine what kind of oversight is best needed for this project. And I think so that can be an internal committee. I don't think it has to be us, but finance can bring a monthly report on where the project is at. So there's 2 separate things. There's one where we're provided information, and 2, that there is an oversight committee. So I think council can determine how that oversight committee should be constructed. And I think we can look at monthly reports on how things are progressing and making whatever recommendations need to be made when we see things perhaps going off track or what have you.
Member Hutchings?
So I'd like to make two resolutions, and I think Member Thompson will second me on both. The first is, are you ready for this? Is it Jessica? Is that you? Okay, Jessica, you ready? That staff be, my first resolution I'd like to put on the table is that staff be directed to bring forth a monthly report to finance that shows the project stages, the budget of the project, the money spent to date, and the money forecasted. Are your fingers burning, Jessica? Did you get them?
We have live, so she can look at the tape later too, to make sure we get the exact wording.
So that's the first thing. And so we can debate that. My second motion will be that staff bring forth back a report, whether it be council or this committee, I don't know. Let's just be clear. So it sounds like a member Vardy wants to go to council, so I think that's probably appropriate. Council be asked to bring a report forth to council about the project oversight of the committee and what they would suggest, whether it's internal or a committee of council oversee the project, as this being the largest capital project the town of Grimsby has on record.
Thank you, Member Thompson. So we're going to deal with each resolution individually. So the first one, the motion has been put forward by Member Hutchings, has been seconded by Member Thompson, and that has to do with I will say, the regular reporting back to finance of the components that were mentioned in the resolution. If I could ask for the vote by a raise of hands, all those in favor? And Councillor Vardy?
In favor.
Thank you. That motion is carried. Then we will deal with the second resolution on the table, which is to ask staff for a report with their recommendations on the oversight of this project. And it is our recommendation that we ask staff to do that and to report to council on this. And Member Hutchings has put that resolution forward. Member Thompson has seconded that. And I will now ask for a report and that I will ask for a vote. All those in favor of it, please raise your hand.
I agree.
And and so we have one abstainer, I guess, is how we will, it's not, I believe if we don't vote, it's considered, I'm going to ask our recording secretary, if someone doesn't vote, is that considered a yes or a no?
An abstention.
An abstention? Okay.
No, sorry, an abstention is considered a no.
An abstention is considered a no.
I just want more clarification on the committee. That's all. So I will support it. And then I'm going to, once I have that information, then I can see what happens.
Yes, once you see the report, then you'll know further. Okay. So I believe that motion is carried as well. Thank you very much, everyone. That was a good, intense discussion, and I think that there are some real positive recommendations on how to handle this going forward. I think I have to go back still to ask all of you to vote on the biannual procurement report. And do we have a first and seconder? We did, in order to get it on the floor, so I'll just read you that resolution again. Resolve that report Finance 24-03, the biannual procurement report dated January 25th, 2024, be received for information. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
I'm in favor.
Thank you, Councillor Vardy. That motion is carried. Then we will move on now to item number 9 on the agenda, which is correspondence, and that item 9.1 is a memorandum from our staff on the whistleblower policy review. At the last meeting that we had with our auditors, we were talking about risk and how important it is to have a whistleblower policy, and the audit firm indicated that they were aware that we had one and considered that to be very good. But the committee had asked just for some more information about the policy, and so a memorandum has been included with all of this. Would staff like to speak to that before we?
I'll speak briefly. So I'm tired. Yeah, so this came out of the last meeting, and so I did do some looking at it because I wasn't here when the policy was created, but it was a policy that was created with staff, for staff. So it was vetted through employees in advance as well, and my understanding is it came through corporate HR and clerk's department. It's actually a clerk's policy. That being said, we did dig the policy out for everyone to see, and there was some questions about the reporting mechanism and what the reporting would be should it be something to do with the chief administrative officer. And the policy is clear that reporting related to the CAO would be to the town clerk and the HR manager. Additionally, the policy allows for any reporting to go through an independent third-party provider, should a staff member not want to go through those other options. So that is there, and we did provide a copy of the policy to Grant Thornton, to James, and he came back and indicated that he has no issues with the policy the way it is, and they would just review anything that comes through as reported, and we would get that reporting. And there was none that we have right now, so.
And I realize it was myself who raised the question at the last meeting. I guess we know we have a policy. It's good that the audit firm is aware that there is a policy. Of course, the whole point of a policy is that if there are submissions through that policy, that the audit firm be aware of them so that they can address the risks and implications of that in their audit. And so I think, my concern or my question in that was, that we need to make sure that the auditors, or that we share with the auditors if there are any reporting of issues that come through this policy so that they can assess the implications on their audit, right? And so I guess the question really is to staff, is there a mechanism in place to share any issues that come through this policy with the auditors? Can we ensure that they are kept abreast if there are any issues that get reported through this in planning their audit and undertaking their audit procedures and so on?
Through the chair. So when the auditors come in and they do pre-audit work as well as, the audit work, they provide interviews with the CAO, with certain key people within the organization, and there are questions around fraud, perceived or otherwise, and that we're all required to answer those questions. So if there is a knowledge of any wrongdoings that should be reported from an audit perspective, that is our mechanism to report that. That being said, as far as I know, there's been no reports, so we haven't had to go through that. I have had that at the Region of Peel where, there is that piece, and there's different departments. They do have internal audit there, so it's a little bit different. But those are questionnaires that they ask, both written and verbal, that you have to respond to. So the treasurer would have to respond. There'd be questions to the HR manager, the clerk, and to the CAO, so it should be captured within that process.
Yeah, so really my question was just to make sure that those questions are asked of staff so that a response can go back to the auditor. Does anyone have any other questions about our policy and procedure on this issue? Member Hutchings?
Remember that speech about hindsight, foresight, insight, and I got insight here. So just, it's a small comment, but it's a big comment. It's just, I find it interesting that it's called whistleblower. I know that's the vernacular, but if you look at, and I know from our perspective as pretty senior people here in council and board members, it makes sense it's called whistleblower. But most organizations, this is my insight, don't call it whistleblower. If you're a frontline young staff member, you have nowhere to turn, and you go to the whistleblower, I'm going to be the whistleblower. Like it's not a great thing to be called the whistleblower. Most places call it safe reporting. I need somewhere to report this safely so I don't get in trouble from my supervisor. How do I report this safely? I don't want to be the whistleblower. It sounds like something you'd see on a movie or something. But it's really, so it's just a name. I'm not hung up on it. I'm not something that's going to keep me up tonight. But most organizations call it a whistleblower policy, but for frontline staff, it's how do I report safely? So.
Thank you. That does sound much better, actually, with that term, but we will leave that with staff. Does anyone have any other questions or comments? Then we have had a mover and a seconder on this? Not yet. So I will ask for someone to move and second the receiving of this memo from our finance department on this. Anyone? Member Thompson, a seconder? Member Hutchings. So the resolution, it's resolved that the memorandum C-AD-2022, the whistleblower policy dated January 25th, 2024, be received for information. With the show of hands, all those in favor, please. And Councillor Vardy?
I see your hand.
We see your hand. Thank you. That motion is carried. That leaves us with item 10 on our agenda, which is other business. And I realize we have approved the agenda, but I'm open to any other issues any of our members would like to add under other business. Member Hutchings.
I just want to say, Grimsby is friendly by nature, and Welland is well and good. You've only been here a short time. We really appreciate your knowledge, your expertise. We're going to miss you. It's two shorts. But thank you for what you've contributed while you've been here. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you. I didn't know that about the city of Welland. I have a lot of family members who were born and raised there and still live there. That's pretty good. Sort of stole my thunder. Thank you very much, Stephanie. We are going to miss you. Tomorrow is your last day. But whenever you're driving through, please feel free to stop and visit us again.
Did you notice all the promises she made? She doesn't have to do all those things she promised.
She explained things. That's why Angela is here with us today, because Angela is going to step up again and help us. Thank you, Angela. Thank you so much. So at this point in time, we're going to move on to item number 11 on the agenda, which is our February meeting. And so the next date of our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, February 22nd at 6 p.m.
No,
No?
no, there's a thing on there that's,
Sorry?
they want to cancel it, so.
It's budget month. Pardon me. I was just looking at the bottom and not at the very top. Angela, sorry, do you want to come to the mic and speak to it?
At that meeting, we have a scheduled meeting for February, but unfortunately with Steph leaving and me planning a vacation on another continent, I won't be here for that meeting. And the two reports we did have planned are not going to be ready for that time. It was the CBC and the user fee, and they're still underway. So we were planning on canceling that meeting and rescheduling, moving anything that we can to March.
Thank you. Okay. Then my apologies for not reading the first line of my details here and just going right to that last one. So that's just to let everyone know, but we need to officially have a resolution to cancel that. So I'll ask for a mover and a seconder on that resolution to cancel our February 22nd, 2024 committee meeting. Councillor Sharwa? Councillor Vardy, will you second that?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Then all those in favor of canceling the February 22nd, 2024 meeting, with a show of hands, please. So I have, let me officially count.
I won't be at that meeting, but I'll vote for it.
So we have 1, 2, 3. Councillor Vardy, are you voting to cancel that meeting?
Yes, I am. I'm just having trouble finding the icon.
Okay, well, that does carry the motion even without asking the other members. That is carried with 4 votes in favor. Thank you very much, everyone. Then we will adjourn the meeting this evening at 7:42, I have. Thank you very much.